better hope I don't find you.
I never thought my art would cause a controversy like this. And I'm not sure what's gonna happen here, so I just have one thing to say.
You're probably wondering why you're subjected to my nose hairs right now. It all started as I was pondering how to get into the Christmas spirit this year when a dimly lit idea occurred to sculpt a zombie Rudolph that you might have noticed in the thumbnail. To start this one off, I created a wooden armature on a vertical surface since this is going to be a wall-mounted sculpture. To bulk it up, newspaper is added and covered in plastic wrap so the clay can release from it later. This is stoneware clay. After shimmying down its britches and taking off a slice, I can then start packing on the meat. That's a weird way of putting it, but I'm an artist, not a poet. At any rate, this Servine bust is starting to take shape, but before I put it to rest for the night, I add a stand-in head for kicks and giggles. I'll cover this thing up with plastic and start on it again tomorrow. Now I know I've been taking cold medicine, but I am pretty sure I put a head on this thing last night. Won't worry about that now. Today, I'm focused on the actual head that I'm going to use for this piece. This is a deer skull I found in the woods that's been on display in our shadow box table that we built in an earlier video. I haven't decided if I want to use the actual skull or not, so today I'm going to try something a little strange. I'm rolling out clay slabs to make a mold of this deer skull. I like using clay for molds because the flexibility allows me to capture complex forms in fewer parts than plaster. But first, let's talk molds real quick. I feel like there's this thought that using molds is cheating when the truth is mold making is an art in and of itself. And even if you don't make the mold personally, what's important is that if there's art to be made, that it gets made. And molds are just another tool in the toolbox. Now, could I make a skull from scratch if I wanted to? You bet. Like, check this one out. This is a piece that I made years ago based on a northern white rhino skull. But my goal with this is to show you a different way of working and thinking. Now, back to it. As I was saying before I interrupted, I'm going to make this a relatively simple two-part mold. I create a flange at the parting line by smearing on a thick coil of clay, which you will see its function here in a bit. But while that dries, I'll go ahead and start on some fur texture for the bust. I like to do this by smearing on clumps of clay in the different directions that I would expect the tufts to grow. I find this a visceral process, and I'm not concerned with making it hyper-realistic, but merely a stylized illusion of what appears to be fur. This is what it's looking like so far. I'll clean and soften up some of this as the clay dries a little, but in the meantime, let's check on that mold. Now that the clay has become more firm, I cut through the flanges down to the bone and carefully pry apart the pieces. The top was a struggle to come off, so unfortunately I had to cut it in half, but the bottom came off surprisingly easy. I piece the cut sections back together into a two-part mold and give it a little bit of cleanup. The flanges help to align the mold and give me a place to clamp some temporary clay coils to prevent warping while drying. After a few days, the mold is fired in an electric kiln to nearly 2,000 degrees and transformed into a sturdy, porous material known as bisque.
Cast me like one of your French girls.
Casting consists of pressing clay slabs firmly into each half and using slip or liquid clay for a strong bond at the seams. Given a few hours, the newly cast form can be popped from the mold. Once freed, you just give it a little cleanup.
And then try not to give in to your intrusive thoughts.
Before I can put on the skull, I carve out some of the negative spaces and build up where necessary. The problem I'm noticing right off the bat is that the skull and bust are disproportionate, so it looks straight up like a Goomba from the 1993 Mario movie. So although reindeer are bulkier than white-tailed deer, I'll just lengthen the neck to balance it out. I was about to put on the head, but I realized I hadn't added a subliminal message to this piece yet. That's an inside joke, but now it's inside skull, and only you and I know about it. To attach, I score, slip, smear, scrape, and smooth. That's good alliteration. Maybe I am a poet after all. Let's add smacking to that as well. I'm trying to create a muscly, fibrous transition from the skull down into the neck. Now, I've never really created gore before, so I'm not a pro at this, but I'm basically just thinking about the stromboli that I had earlier. It was actually really good. For the fleshy bits, I'm pressing clay into thin, ripped sheets and making them nice and wrinkly for a good transition between muscle, fur, and skull. Now, I'll add on fur in a similar fashion as earlier to complete the zombie look. Here, I noticed something terrifying. Do you see it? First, I add on prongs for the horns, which I'll create later, and then make a hole for a support wire. Then, it's on to tediously recreating as many of these different textures and details as possible. Once the sculpting is essentially finished, I have to cut this thing off the armature and start hollowing out any thick areas. Once that's done, it's just a matter of piecing it back together and cleaning up the seams. Now wet work on this poor beast is done, so for a few days I'll let it dry up a bit under a towel. Sweet dreams. Alright, now since this is starting to approach bone dry, I've got to be very careful here. And now how did you end up here?
I've been here this whole time, all around you. You see, time is a flat circle, and we've both been here before, and we always will, over and over and over again. I'll be seeing you.
If you could drive like I have glass bones and paper skin, that'd be great. I love railroads.
We've made it safely to the kiln, but now Rudolph must face his trial by fire.
Ooh.
Now that Rudolph has been fired to stone, I'm mixing epoxy clay for a system to mount him to a plaque. I add coils of epoxy to small pieces of wood and clamp them down behind these screw holes. While that cures, I cut out the custom plaque with a jigsaw in an extremely professional manner. I also cut out a large hole in the middle so that the sculpture can be slipped over this wall mount. I give a check for the alignment of the screws, and once I see that it works and holds strong, I round out the edges of the plaque with a router and hit it with some poly shades for that authentic look. In the meantime, let's move on to coloring the sculpture. I like to start by adding in a dark wash to the entire sculpture. For this one, I'm just using diluted acrylic paint that I wipe back with a sponge. Next, I start building up different fur tones with an airbrush. I was doing really well until I decided it would be a good idea to make the chest part lighter. It wasn't. To fix it, I add in a wash of brown over the top and wipe it back, which actually pulled off some of the layers of paint and I think created a really cool natural look. This is what Bob Ross would have called a happy accident. With the fur done, I can add in some fleshy tones to the skin with a bloody wash and hit the muscle fibers with some subtle dry brushing. I thought about keeping it matte, but went back later with a gloss varnish for that juicy, fresh wound look. I'll also do some dry brushing to various areas of the skull and kill back the intensity with a brown wash. I'll follow that up with a few blood stains near the transition points. It's finally time to make some antlers, and also time to reveal what I'm hiding under my hat. It's just my hair, but what's in it is polymer clay. This is actually my first time using polymer clay, so I'm doing everything wrong, like making the armature out of a clothes hanger and using hot glue for reinforcement, knowing that it's going to go in the oven. The structure is bulked with aluminum foil and wrapped with fine wire before adding on a thin layer of polymer clay. I find that a pottery rib, the end of a paintbrush, and this lava rock create a pretty convincing antler texture. Once they are cleaned up and cured in the oven, they are primed with spray paint and dark washes are added to accent the textures. Since these will be a bit fragile and precarious, I go ahead and install the plaque before using epoxy to secure them. While those are setting up, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to add the iconic red nose. I'm using a light bulb, and since this Rudolph's face has rotted off, it only makes sense that the light bulb is shattered. This took me 3 different tries, but after peeling off the tape, I finally had a light bulb that was perfect. Carefully, the bulb is glued into place, and it is now time to step back and behold this Christmas icon in its decrepit and eternal repose.
Hold up here, Wesley Hooper. That's my favorite reindeer on the wall.
It's not what you think it is. I'm just an artist. I make strange things, and I was trying to get into the Christmas spirit.
You're on the naughty list now. You better hope I don't find you.
I never thought my art would cause a controversy like this. And I'm not sure what's gonna happen here, so I just have one thing to say. Whether you say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or nothing at all, can't we all just get along and make strange things? Is that too much to